Hello book lovers, welcome to Uncommon Reader. I'm Daniela and this is my August TBR. I'm pretty excited about making this video today, although it's really hot. I'm well equipped. I've got my magnesium and potassium water. I have all my books spread out. I have a towel. And I have a book for ventilation. I do have AC here at home, but it's in the other room. And I would need to keep the door open, but since I'm not alone at home, I didn't want to have any background noise. And so let's start, because I'm pretty excited about this month's reads. Two of them will be buddy reads. And let's dive in the first one, which is super famous, one of the most famous books of all times. It's The Diary of a Young Girl, also known as The Diary of Anne Frank, which I'm going to be reading with Reney of Beyond Books. And this is going to be one of hers banned book series. And for me, it's particularly touching because I've recently been in Amsterdam and I visited the secret annex that's now become the Anne Frank's Museum, and it was a very emotional visit, and I think it's going to be very emotional as well to read this book, because now I can picture Anne as she was writing, having visited the rooms she inhabited with her family from 1942 when the Nazis invaded Holland, and her family had to hide from the Nazis, being of course Jewish. And this place, when you go, if you have a chance to go to Amsterdam, do visit the museum. Unfortunately, when they've been discovered and deported, they also emptied the secret annex that was part of an old office building in the center of the city, actually. But Anne's dad, who was the only survivor to the Holocaust, was able to reconstruct and help whoever decided to make that secret annex a museum after the war. He helped them recreate this little model replica of how the place was furnished. So I think it's going to be very emotional to read the book and imagine Anne's in those rooms, in those tiny narrow rooms. That really gives you an idea of how difficult it was to live in such a tiny place with many occupants. And especially touching were those stairs that would bring them to the roof, where sometimes at night Anne would go to look at the stars. And I haven't said this before, but I've read this book when I was a teenager, and I'm very curious to reread this book now, being able to picture Anne in those rooms that I visited. And this edition I purchased from Giunti Editor. It's an Italian publisher. It's very special. It's filled with the photos and also family photos. And all these notes written. Of course, this is not Anne's writing, but I think it makes it a little more special. And I bought this edition about a year ago. I was really enamored by the graphics, and of course I wanted to have a copy of this. I think when I read it first time, it was rented from the library, so it's good to have this book in our house. The second book I'm going to buddy read is Memoir of a Dutyful Daughter. in my Italian version by Simone de Beauvoir. And I'm going to be reading this with Alessia of Alessia Libri. She has an Italian BookTube channel. She lives in lovely Sardinia, and we've been connected through my Italian channel, Gocce di Libri. And we've been talking about reading this book together for a few months now. So we finally found the right month where we both could focus on this book. And for me, it's going to be the first time reading anything from Simone de Beauvoir, who is one of the greatest literary figures of the 20th century. She was also one of the protagonists of that cultural golden era in Paris during the first decades of the 20th century. And I'm very curious to explore that with her, because it was actually one of my favorite periods that I like to read about, in between the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century. I think there were so many changes and drastic changes as well. So I think to see the perspective on intellectuals, on everything that was changing around them, is very, very interesting. And this is actually the first book she wrote as a part of a series of autobiographies. So I'm looking forward to it. The font is a little tiny. I'm a little worried about it. But I'm sure that it will be very, very entertaining. So other books that I'm going to be reading, and actually I just started this one last night, is Abraham Verghese, Cutting for Stone. I have the Italian version, no more books in English. I'm back in Italy, so yes, this is the beautiful new edition by Neri Pozza. Neri Pozza is my favorite publisher in Italy. They never have a dull book release, and this is actually a book that Verghese wrote before The Covenant of Water, that was so successful last year, and I loved it. But this is a new edition. I think in Italy they've been publishing this because of the success of The Covenant of Water, so they republished this. I'm not sure the first edition, which year was the first edition of this book. Let's see, 2009. Okay, we found it. And this is a 2024 new edition. I'm gonna be reading it in Italian, but since it's of course a book that's been published in English, I won't have any problems, because you can also read the book if you're interested. It's the story of two twin brothers, who are born in an Ethiopian hospital from a beautiful Indian nun and a surgeon, a British surgeon, that meet and work together. The mom unfortunately dies at birth. It's all written in the second page, so no spoilers. It happens right away. And so the brothers grew up in the hospital, and they share a passion for medicine, of course, being surrounded by doctors. But they also share a passion for the same woman. And unfortunately, that passion will eventually divide them. And one of them will flee Ethiopia in the brink of a revolution and land in New York, where he'll find a job as a doctor in the Bronx district. There's going to be something, though, that might change the destiny. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but I'm sure this book will keep me entertained. I've heard it's not as good as The Covenant of Water, but I'm still very curious. So the next book I'm going to read, unfortunately, is not available in English, so I'm not going to dwell too much talking about it. It's a French book published in Italy by Cécile Baudin, and I can translate the title as The Factory of the Crossing Destinies. And it's a mystery story. During the Industrial Revolution in France. So it has connotations of historic novel as well. And there's this factory where the book is supposed to be set in, a textile factory where most of the workers are women. And I think it will touch also workers' conditions, workers' rights. So it's not just going to be like a light mystery, but I guess that I will learn a lot about those days as well. Again, one of the most interesting periods of history. I was also reading, I think the latest book from Ken Follett was touching the industrialization revolution in Britain, of course, but that was kind of a very interesting book in terms of historical novel. The story was a little slow, but still was an enjoyable read. So I will continue also my read, although I'm not going to finish it in August, so I might carry on this into the fall, The Kingdom of Emmanuel Carrère. Carrère is one of my favorite authors, and this book is about religion. It's not a fiction book, so it takes a little time to go through Carrère's thoughts, because he's very intense, so you need to be very focused on when you're reading, and that's why I take my time, absorb all his words and his concepts. So I will have another read that I don't have here in my hands yet, because I'm going to pick it up from the library. We've decided yesterday on our next library book club read, and it's going to be a Georges Simenon mystery. Again, meeting a French author this month. And since I don't have the book here with me, I'm going to read you what the book is about through Goodreads. So the book is called The Engagement in English, and we're on the outskirts of Paris, where a prostitute is found murdered in a vacant lot. In a seedy apartment house nearby lives pasty, fat Mr. Hire. Mr. Hire, who earns his living through a petty postal scam, is a convicted pornographer, and he's once a week the unlikely star of a Parisian bowling club where people think he works for the police. He is a faceless man of regular habits who keeps to himself and gives his neighbors the creeps. After the murder, Mr. Hire's concierge points a finger at him. He was out late the night of the crime. The police have the suspect under 24-hour surveillance. They are only waiting for him to make the inevitable mistake and give himself away. But is he really the killer? Well, we'll find out. So I made it through. It wasn't so bad, was it? I mean, my thoughts were not very articulated at times, but this is it, you know. It's summertime, we're sweating, and our brain doesn't function 100%. But I hope you still enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear what are your thoughts on these books and what are you going to read in August. Thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel with the subscribing, liking, and commenting. I'm going to be starting reviewing books from next week on, so finally we'll be really digging into stories. I'll see you next time, and in the meantime, happy reading. Ciao!